feel good.
That was a place called Slab City in California. Used to be some old military base. Eventually they just picked up and left, and instead it was inhabited by a unique group of people, I'd say. They create art out of almost anything, and why am I showing you guys that? Well, I think poker is about so much more than just poker, and one of those things is traveling. And I think sharing that with you guys is equally as important as hands and bad beats and big pots and whatever. Plus, it's just super cool. We also visited Bombay Beach, which is another nearby city. It used to be inhabited like any other city, except it just became this weird, almost like a post-apocalypse vibe. I'm not sure if I'm describing it right. Maybe some drone footage would be a bit more useful to... You guys want to know what else was nearby Slab City and Bombay Beach? Poker and a casino. Agua Caliente, to be exact. Yep, we definitely played some poker there, but before we get into that, I wanted to try something new with you guys. I wanted to go over 3 hands from the past few sessions I've had. I thought it would be interesting to have you guys partake in some interesting spots where there is no one clear option, I think. If you're not into it, these will be quick. If you are into it, just leave a comment down below telling me what you'd do. It's 3 hands, so let's just get to it. In the first hand, we're playing 2-5, and we have $600 in front of us. There's 2 limps, and now the cutoff opens to 25. We look down at 8-7 of hearts and make the call. The big blind also calls, so we're 3 ways to a flop, which was 10-7-5 with 1 heart. Big blind checks, cutoff continues for 35. We call, big blind folds. Heads up to a turn, which is the deuce of spades, bringing in a flush draw. This time the cutoff checks. We bet $90, and the cutoff makes the call. The river is a 10. Cutoff checks. What do you guys think here? Memorize your answer, because we're on to hand number 2. In this hand, we're playing 1-3. We have $550 in our stack. There's an under the gun open to 9. There's 2 calls. We 3-bet the small blind with ace-king offsuit. Make it $50 to go. Only the first caller of the $9 open makes the call. So heads up to a flop, which is ace-8-7 rainbow. We bet 45. He makes the call. Turn is a 6 of spades, bringing in a flush draw. We bet 120. Middle position makes the call. River is the 6 of clubs. On this river, what would you guys do? Curious to see what you think. Next hand, we're back to 2-5. We have around $700 or $800 in our stack. There's 1 limper, and we open the button to $25 with queen 10 of diamonds. Now the small blind, a fairly good player, 3-bets to 100, folds to us, and we make the call. The flop comes queen 5-5 with 2 clubs. The small blind continues for $80. We call, and now the turn is a 10 of clubs. The small blind checks, and the action's on us. What do you guys think? Check? Bet? If so, how much? Yeah, just give your thoughts. Those are the 3 hands I wanted to kind of go over with you guys. I'll touch on them again, I think, in the end of the video. If I forget, don't hate me, but... Anyway, it's time to get down to business. This vlog is from a session at Agua Caliente, which is a hotel, casino, resort, spa, all of the above in the middle of the desert in California. Let's get to it. Okay, so I wanted to give my insight on what I thought of this casino, this property, and let's just start with the pros. Right off the bat, number one pro for me is gonna be that it's an extremely clean, nice casino. I'm not sure how picky you guys are with general hygiene and how clean a place is, but to me that's somewhat a big deal. Secondly, people and staff there are just very friendly. There's not a very serious vibe going on. It's kind of laid back, kind of relaxed, and I can't be mad at that. I definitely enjoy that more than floor staff who kind of take everything very, very seriously, and it almost feels like business atmosphere more than a laid back recreational vibe. And that ties into the third point, which is that the poker games themselves have no professionals from what I've seen. I've been there 2 or 3 times, and I don't think I've seen a poker pro once. They may have been there in disguise, but on the surface, it doesn't look like anyone there is taking the game too seriously. It's a lot of recreational players who are generally not extremely skilled in the game. So that's for sure a plus. Lastly, something I really like about this place is you can buy into the 2-5 extremely deep. $2,000 for a 2-5 game. That's 400 big blinds. Although not a lot of people buy in for that much, most are buying in for 500 to 1,000. It's still cool that you have that option. And if you do jump into an extremely deep game, you can match a lot of stacks. So it really changes the way poker is approached when you're 100 plus big blinds deep. And it's definitely the way, in my opinion, poker should be played and is the most fun to play. So that is for sure a plus in my eyes for Agua Caliente. Moving on to the cons. There are for sure some cons. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 are all gonna be a $2 chip. This place uses $2 chips in all their no limit games, and I think their limit games as well, and it's just miserable. It's so hard to tell how big people's stacks really are. It's hard to judge how big the pot is. It's difficult to break the blinds every hand. It's just a huge pain in the ass, if I can be honest with you guys. Secondly, the minimum buy-in at 1-3 no limit is $60. What that means is there's a lot of 1-3 tables that have just not very much money on the table. Third, I wanted to say that it's a bit strange to play on tables that are partly felt, partly like marble or plastic. It's kind of a strange design. It's visually pleasing, but playing on it is kind of awkward. The point where the marble meets the felt and all your chips are stacked, when you slide a bet across, a lot of times your chips fall over and sometimes cards get caught in that weird seam in between. So I don't know, I prefer just an all felt table. Lastly, and probably the most important thing aside from the $2 chips, is that the room is very cramped. The tables are just super close to each other. Trying to go to the bathroom or get up for any reason at all, you have to navigate through a maze and you're bumping into everyone. It's kind of uncomfortable and something to note if you're gonna be spending a lot of time there. Overall, I'd give Agua Caliente's poker room a 4 out of 10. Moving on to poker hands. We played 1-3, we played 2-5, and we got some free slot play. Let's get to it. Starting things off with ace queen of clubs in the big blind. Playing 1-3 in for 300. This is our first hand dealt. There's 2 limps. I make it $20 to go. Both the limpers make the call. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which comes queen, jack, 6 with 2 hearts. It's a ton of hands we could get value from, lots of available draws, so I want to size up here. I make it $45 to go. They both make the fold, so simple hand, but happy to take down the first one of the session. Moving on. One orbit later, we're in a similar spot. There's two limps, and we look down at pocket kings. Another premium from out of position, we make it $20 to go. They both make the call, so pretty similar spot. We're off to a flop of ace, jack, deuce with two diamonds. I check and it checks around. Still three ways to a turn, which is an offsuit 6. I check. This time, the first limp caller makes a bet of $9. The player in between gets out of the way. It's back to us. Not going anywhere just yet. I make the call, and now the river is an offsuit 3. We check, and he quickly checks back, which is generally not a good sign. Sure enough, he flips over ace 9 offsuit. So, moving on to the next hand. Next hand is fairly interesting. There's two limps, and an older gentleman who had not played many hands at all makes it $8 to go. We're in the button with 5-3 of spades, and we make the call. Both the limpers make the call, so we're 4 ways to a flop. The flop is 10-9-4 with two diamonds. It checks to the aggressor, who continues for $12. My read is that he's not very strong here at all, so I put in the call, and I plan to steal it on later turns or rivers that favor my range over his. Unfortunately, the two players behind me make the call, so when the turn is a 9 of clubs, it seems a bit ambitious to bluff into 3 opponents when it checks to me on this turn. But the more I think about it, the more I kind of like it, because I don't have any cards in my hand that block a lot of draws, and it's just really hard for them to continue unless they have a 9. And even if they do continue without a 9, I'll just steal the pot on the river. So I put in a bet here. I make it $50. It folds all the way to the aggressor, who thinks about it for a bit and lets it go. So that one works out in our favor. Happy to take this one down without a fight. At this point, we get called for 2-5, and I've never been happier to table change. Goodbye $2 chips, hello normal $5 red chips. We fold the first few orbits, getting absolutely no playable hands. One thing I did notice though is there was a woman in seat 1 who was extremely aggressive every time she sensed weakness or it checks to her. This is going to come into play on this next hand. We look down at King 9 offsuit from the small blind. There's 4 limps, including her, and we complete the small blind. So 5 ways to a flop, which comes Queen 10-8 with 2 diamonds. Checks all the way to her. She's last to act. She bets $15. I think it's a good spot to float and potentially bluff later on, because she could be doing this with any 2 cards, knowing that she's been doing so for the past couple orbits every time it checks to her. And so I think it's fine to put in the float here and steal the pot on a later street. I make the call, everyone else folds. So we go heads up to a turn, which is an offsuit 7. I check and she continues for $40. I think it's a good spot to go for it here. We have equity of called, although not much, and we block the nuts with the 9 in our hand. So I think that's a good spot to turn our hand into a bluff. I check raise to 120. She folds almost instantly. So glad that the read was correct that time, and we scooped the first pot of the 2-5 session. Next, we get into what is potentially the hand of the session. We have Queen 10 offsuit in the big blind. There's 4 limps, and I decided to just check my option. The flop comes Queen, Queen 5. And I think this is a good spot to lead, because most people check when they have a really strong hand and they flop it in the big blind. And I think it will just look even weaker if I lead here on such a dry board. So I bet $10. The middle position limper makes the call, and the button, who is a very tight player, also makes the call. So things are looking just fine. They're looking even better when the turn is a 10. So we make the nuts here on the turn. And I don't know what would look weaker than another lead for the same size. If that doesn't trigger some kind of raise or action behind me, I'm not sure what will. So I make it $10 again. And I know it's unorthodox, but I like to mix in these strange plays from time to time. And it works out. The player behind me does put in a raise. However, he makes it a min raise. Makes it $20 to go, which can be perceived as one of two ways. Kind of like a stabbing, where he's trying to see where he's at, or he's just so extremely strong that he's begging to make a bigger pot but doesn't want to lose his customer. Even better news is that the extremely tight player on the button makes the call. So it's back to us, and I think it's time to really find out what's going on here. Time to pull the trigger. We have a full house, we have the nuts, and if we lose our customers, so be it. But I want to make a big pot here, so I put in a 3-bet on the flop. I make it 120 to go. The player behind me now makes the call, and the extremely tight player on the button also makes the call. So things are looking good heading into this river, and it's hard to know exactly which card would help our value or hurt our value at this point. Though I'm not too worried about it. There's $350 left in our stack, and the pot is $400 or $500. So we're going with it no matter what. River's a 9. We think about it for a bit and jam all in for around 320, 330, I think. The player behind goes all in as well, and now the extremely tight player on the button thinks about it forever and eventually folds Queen Jack suited. We show Queen 10, and the player behind us shows pocket 5s. So turns out on the flop, we were in extremely bad shape. We were behind both players, and we're drawing to a 10 for a win. That's about it. That's the only way we're going to win this pot. So could not have asked for a better turn card. Definitely run good right there. And we get almost the maximum. It's unfortunate that these two players were in the position on the table they were at, because with the Queen Jack player being last to act, he could get away much more easily on that river. He doesn't beat anything at that point aside from like Queen 8 or Queen 7. So we still scoop a decent sized pot there. Move on to the next hand with a much bigger stack. In the next hand, there's one limper, and we look down at pocket kings from late position. $30 to go, the big blind makes the call, and the limper makes the call as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which comes ace, jack, 4, rainbow. Checks to me, and I could go either way here, though I definitely prefer a check. However, in this spot, I thought the limper could continue with a lot of worse hands, so I went for some thin value here. I made it 35. The big blind folds, and the limper, to my surprise, check raises all in for 150 total, I think it was. So a bit of an awkward spot. I don't see exactly what he could be doing this with, aside from just ace rag that is just deciding to go with it. It's such a dry board, there's no available draws, and I don't think he would check jam anything worse than an ace on this texture. So I wish I hadn't bet the flop, obviously, knowing that I was going to be facing a check raise, but I think it's a pretty standard fold. That's what we decided to do. No luck with the pocket kings today so far. Moving on. This next hand is, I think, the most interesting hand of the session by far. There's the most to be said about it. So let's just dive right into it. The aggressive lady in seat 1, previously mentioned, puts in the limp. We isolate with ace king offsuit to $30. Only she makes the call. So we go heads up to a flop of 10-10-6 with 2 diamonds. She checks it over to us, and I'm happy to just check back here for a variety of reasons. Number one is we both started the hand with around $1,000, so there's no need to unnecessarily bloat the pot. Number two, we have really good showdown value in position. And number three, this is an aggressive player we're playing against, so the more we can control the pot, the better it is. So I check. Now we're off to a turn, which is the king of hearts. She bets $50. Pretty big sizing relative to the pot. Obviously, we're not going anywhere when we turn top pair, top kicker. But it's worth noting that what could she really have here? If she had a 10 or flopped a full house, would she really be going so big? And if she had a king, she's definitely over-representing her hand at this point with such a big sizing, and I could have a ton of better kings. So, seems a bit strange. Obviously, we're not going anywhere just yet, but I'm paying close attention to everything she's doing. So we make the call, and the river is an interesting card. It's a jack of spades. Complete sum, straight draws, all the flush draws miss, and interestingly enough, she leads out for $200. Pretty big sizing for the pot size, and I think it's interesting. I lean towards a fold at first, but the more I think about it, the more her story just isn't adding up. So obviously, if she's betting for value, we're not winning, and if she's bluffing, we are winning. So let's look at the hands that she would bet for value in this spot. Jack 10, possible candidate, though it seems a bit optimistic of her to bet so big on the turn if she was that strong. And also, it's just really hard to make a full house. Queen 10, same thing. Why would she be betting so big on the turn? King 10, we block. Ace 10, we block. 10-9, possible, but again, it just all goes back to why is she betting so big on the turn if she has such a strong made hand. Ace Queen, we block, and that meant that she had to almost pot it on the turn with a gut shot. Queen 9, makes it straight. Yeah, Queen 9. Again, she would have been betting huge on the turn with just a gut shot. Seems unlikely. So after thinking about it for just quite a long time, I just couldn't really put her on a hand. And if she was weighted so strong, why would she be over potting it? I feel like she would try to go for a sizing that we can call more on. So it just felt like things weren't adding up. Something smelled off. And although we only have one pair, I think it's good here a lot of the time. Given the line she's taken, just the story doesn't add up. We make the call, and sure enough, she shows ace deuce offsuit.
Wow.
So we made $80 playing 1-3 and $715 playing 2-5. In addition, $19 from slots. What a day. So yeah, it was a great day in the California desert, and before I wrap the video up, I wanted to go over those 3 hands I previously mentioned at the start of the video where I asked for feedback. In the first hand, we had 8-7 of hearts, and it checked to us on the river. I checked back, and we won against ace queen. I put my opponent on ace high that hand, and the reason I shared it with you guys is because I think it's worth contemplating a small bet to get a hero call from ace high, or even a really big bet to make it look like a bluff, like a misdraw, and possibly trigger a call from ace high as well. Seems extremely thin, but I don't know, just something I was thinking about after the hand, and I'm curious to see what you guys thought about that. In the second hand, we had ace king, and on that river, if we check, our opponent can check back ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, and we lose a ton of value. However, if our opponent has missed draws and we check, we can get a ton of value from missed draws. There's merit to both, I think. I can lean either way on that. It kind of depends what you put your opponent on. In this particular case, I checked, and my opponent checked back 8-7, so counterfeit 2 pair. Just curious to see what you guys think about that spot. Lastly, that queen 10 hand was actually from a close friend of mine. On that turn card where the flush gets there, do you guys check or do you guys bet? Or maybe bet fold? My personal opinion was I like around a 2/3 pot size bet on that turn card. My friend agreed, that's what he did, and he took it down. Small blind folded. So yeah, just, you know, it's nice to see what everyone thinks about those spots. I think they're interesting, and it's not a clear answer what you should do in any of those. So to wrap things up, I hope you guys enjoy the video. As always, thank you for watching, thank you for commenting, and thank you for liking the video if you did. Good luck out there, and I'll see you next video. Peace.